The moment you decide you want to change direction in your business, one terrifying thought takes place. I'm going to have to start all over again. You assume all those years, all that hard work, and all that hard-won expertise are just getting thrown in the trash. But shifting your business model is not an admission of failure, and adjusting your offer is not abandoning your legacy. You aren't starting over. You're transferring your expertise. We're breaking down the exact strategic inventory you need to change your business smoothly without wasting a single ounce of your decades of wisdom. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Midlife Business Academy. I'm Lori Lyons, marketing strategist, business coach, and accidental techie. After years of running a successful website design agency, I'm now building the business of my dreams and helping other midlife entrepreneurs do the same. From strategy to marketing to mindset, we covered what really matters when you're growing a business that fits your life. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Midlife Business Academy. I'm Lori Lyons. If you haven't listened to last week's episode or even the episode before that, I want to encourage you to go back and start there. Start with the hot seat coaching episode with Karen Lovett, because this is part of the series and this is what we're talking about for the next couple of weeks. And it really was inspired by my conversation with Karen. So last week I got pretty personal. I talked about the hustle, the grind, the laptop on the beach, clients after giving birth to my son. And the moment I realized that the business I had built was successful, but it wasn't really what I wanted anymore, or not where I am today. So today's episode is for you. If you've heard all of that and thought, okay, I get it. The dream has changed, but what now? If I change direction, am I throwing everything away? Did I waste all those years? Do I have to start from scratch? That's exactly where we're going today. And I have a story to tell you. I'm gonna give you a summary of my episode with Karen. Karen had spent decades doing trauma and grief coaching. It was distinguished, it was meaningful, and it was important work. The kind of work that genuinely changes lives. And she came to me and said something I think a lot of us have felt but haven't quite said out loud yet. I want to do something I enjoy. I want to put the fun back in. I'm ready to move on. And what she wanted to move toward was a performance coaching business, working with singers, actors, speakers, performers of all kinds, helping them get out of their own way so their talent can actually show up on stage. Now, here's what's interesting. When Karen started her coaching training, performance coaching was actually what she really wanted to do. That was always the dream. She'd been performing since she was 3 years old. Her first on-air gig was at the age of 3. It was in her bones. But when she started coaching, people found out her background in trauma work and started asking for help with that. And she's a giver, so she said yes, and yes, and yes, and yes again for decades. So on the surface, when Karen came to me, it looked like a complete reinvention. In fact, she said, I need to start over. Trauma coaching to performance coaching, grief work to stage work. It looked like she was walking away from everything that she'd built. But here's what I saw that she didn't quite see yet. She wasn't leaving anything behind. So if you think about it, Karen spent her entire career helping people identify what was blocking them, helping them work through the thing underneath the thing, trauma, helping them find their way to the other side of the fear. She did that for trauma survivors. Now she's going to do it for performers who freeze before walking on a stage, who get stage fright, who have performance anxiety, for a speaker whose voice disappears the moment the microphone goes live, for a singer with world-class talent who can't get out of her own head long enough to let it all out and be who she knows she has the talent to be. The audience changed. The work didn't. And when I pointed that out, Karen said something I haven't stopped thinking about since. Every life experience informs where you go next. It's not a complete pivot because it's who I am. That's not just true for Karen, it's true for you too, and for me. But here's where I want to pause because I see a pattern in this constantly, and I want to make sure to name it directly. I have a client who's brilliant, who's experienced, who's knowledgeable, and every time her business needs adjusting, and I mean anything that needs adjusting, she treats it like she's back at square one. She'll say, I have to recreate this, or oh gosh, now I've got to go back and totally rewrite this. No. She'll tweak the copy on a lead magnet and say, I feel like I'm starting over. She doesn't need to do that. She'll refine her messaging. All right, let's start again. My nose is itching. I have a client who's brilliant, experienced, knowledgeable, and every time something in her business needs adjusting, and I mean anything, she treats it like she's back at square one. She'll tweak the copy on the lead magnet and say, I feel like I'm starting over. She'll refine her messaging, and suddenly the whole business feels like it's falling apart. She'll shift slightly toward a new audience, and it triggers this full emotional reset, like all the work that came before it just evaporated. And most of the time, it's what we as business owners do. We tweak, we adjust, we tinker. That's not starting over. Adjusting is not abandoning. Refining is not restarting. Tweaking your lead magnet doesn't mean the last 3 years didn't happen. And this is one of the most common traps I see midlife entrepreneurs falling into. We've been taught by hustle culture, by the coaching industry, by decades of conditioning that change means loss. That if something isn't working exactly as planned, you throw it out and start all over again. That every pivot is a failure in disguise. It's not. Some of the most important work you'll do in your business is refinement work. The adjusting, the tweaking, this is close, but not quite right yet. That's why we have A/B testing, for heaven's sakes. That's not starting over. That's building. And that's what it actually looks like to construct something that lasts. Think about it. Do you still have the same living room paint color that you had when you moved into your house 20 years ago? Probably not. You changed, you tweaked. We're constantly changing things around. And who says that our business has to be different? We have a habit of labeling every change as a restart, a do-over, a beginning. And I understand why. Because from the outside, change looks like change. A teacher becomes a consultant, an executive becomes a coach, a therapist becomes a performance specialist, a designer becomes a strategist, a corporate professional becomes a speaker. The world sees the shifts and calls it starting over. But what's actually happening underneath? You're simply transferring your expertise from one place to another. The title changed. The wisdom and the experience didn't. I've done this myself more times than I can count. If you look at my career on paper, you'll see a teacher, a sales executive, a trainer, a manager, a marketing consultant, a logistical manager, a strategist, a coach, a podcast host, and now the founder of the Midlife Business Academy. On paper, those look like different things, different seasons, different offers, different audiences. But underneath every single one of them, I've always done the same thing. I've shown people opportunities they couldn't see for themselves. I've shown them what they felt was overwhelming. I've created and helped them make decisions and move forward when they were stuck. The packaging changed more than the purpose. And when I looked at Karen's story through that same lens, a woman who spent an entire life helping people perform on stage at age 3, in therapy rooms for decades, and now back on stage, just a different kind. It's not a reinvention at all. It's a refinement. And there's a real difference between those two words, and I think it matters. Reinvention suggests becoming someone else, shredding what you were and building something new entirely from scratch. It sounds exciting in theory and absolutely terrifying in practice because it implies that everything you've done up until now doesn't count anymore. Refinement suggests something different. It says you're becoming more of who you already are. You're taking what's always been true about you and finally pointing it in the right direction. And here's what nobody tells you about building a dream business. Even the right business takes time to calibrate. Even if you're heading in exactly the right direction, the message will need tweaking. The offer will need refining. The audience will need clarifying. And again, that's not failure. And that's not starting over. That's the process of building something real. It's what we all do all the time. So Karen walked out of our coaching session with a clearer message than when she walked in, but she wasn't done refining it. She doesn't need to be. The direction is right. The rest gets sharper as she goes. Midlife isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more fully yourself. And that's a process, not a moment. So if you're nodding your head right now and want to make sure you're getting these weekly reality checks, make sure you're subscribed. My goal for this channel is to help you strip away the generic, exhausting business advice and show you how to build a business that actually honors your decades of wisdom. By subscribing today, you're making sure you don't miss the next week's finale, where we will tackle the guilt of walking away from the traditional 7-figure dream. Subscribe and hit the notification button. So let's make this practical, because I don't want this just to be an interesting idea. I want you to actually see it in your own story. Here's the question I want you to sit with. What have people always come to you for? Not what you sell, not your offer or your title or your niche. What do people naturally seek you out for? What's the thing someone calls you about when they're stuck? What's the problem you saw before you even realize you're solving it? For Karen, people always came to her when something internal was blocking something external, whether that was grief blocking their daily life or performance pressure blocking their talent. The pattern was identical. She just hadn't connected the dots until we were sitting together. For me, people always come to me when they see the pieces, but they can't see the picture. When they know that something needs to change, but they can't figure out what. When they're sitting in the middle of a business that isn't working the way they imagine and they need someone to help them see it clearly. That's been true at every stage of my career. I just kept finding new ways to do it. So what's your version of that? Most people have always come to you for your ability to solve problems, or maybe they've come to you for leadership, or to teach, or to organize chaos into something that actually makes sense. Maybe you're the person that can walk into a room and immediately understand what's wrong or what's possible. Maybe you're the one who makes people feel seen, or the one you ask the questions nobody else thought to ask. Those aren't job descriptions. Those are strengths. And here's what I know about core strengths. They don't stay in one lane. They follow you. They show up in every room you walk into, every business you build, every client you work with. And those strengths follow you into a completely different business tomorrow. What would that business look like? That's the question we're sitting with. Because most people discover when they really look at it that they've had the same core strength for decades. They've just been applying them in different rooms. So here's your action step that I want you to walk through, an exercise I want you to walk through. And I want you to actually do this one, not just listen to it and think it's a good idea and move on. Get out a piece of paper or your notes app or whatever works for you. I want you to create 3 columns. Column 1 is what I'm leaving behind. This is the stuff you're done with, the constant hustle, the client who drains you, the work you dread on Sunday nights, the part of the businesses that have never felt right, the obligations you've outgrown. I want you to write it all down. Let yourself be honest about what you're actually ready to release. It might surprise you what comes from free flow when you're just writing without thinking. Column 2, what I'm taking with me, because this is where it can get interesting. Your expertise is what you're taking with you, your credibility, your relationships, the skills you've spent years, maybe decades developing, the lessons that cost you something to learn, the reputation you earned, the perspective that only comes from having been through what you've been through. Karen isn't leaving 40 plus years of experience at the door when she walks into a session with a performer. She's bringing every bit of it. She just gets to play it somewhere that finally lights her up. Column 3, what I'm moving forward. What am I taking with me? More freedom, more creativity, better clients. And some of those clients can be in the what am I leaving behind column. Think about that. I'm taking with me more joy in the actual work, more life woven into the businesses instead of squeezed around it. Whatever that looks like for you, I want you to write it down. And here's what I notice when I walk clients through this exercise. Most people spend all of their time staring at column 1, the leaving behind, the loss, the what will people think. Your future isn't built from column 1. Your future is built from columns 2 and 3. Everything you're taking with you pointed toward everything you actually want. And that's not starting over. That's the most strategic move you've ever made. So I want to go back to Karen for a second, because there was a moment in our coaching session when I keep coming back to. We were talking about her clients, the performance she's worked with over the years. And she said something very simple and so true that I made her stop and say it again. Everyone that I've ever worked with, talent was not the problem. Think about that. Every single person Karen has ever sat with has had an ability. They had a gift. They had what it takes. The problem was never the talent. The problem was everything getting in the way of the talent showing up. Performance pressure, anxiety, that inner critic that fires up the moment the spotlight turns on. The voice that says, what if I misalign? What if they judge me? What if I'm not enough? What if somebody sings better? Blah, 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 blah. And I thought, that's not just a performance problem. That's a business problem too. How many of us are sitting on decades of expertise, real hard word knowledge and skill, and the thing getting in the way isn't the talent, it's the pressure, the fear, the voice that says you've come too far down this road to change direction now, the one that says wanting something different at this stage means admitting that the last chapter was wrong. It wasn't wrong. The talent was never the problem. Sometimes the business isn't the problem either. Sometimes it's just the business model. Sometimes it's just the direction you've been pointing at all of that talent. And the only thing that needs to change is the aim. And sometimes, honestly, it's just the message on your lead magnet. Not the whole business, not the whole career, not everything you've worked for, just the aim. So if you've taken the action step and written your 3 columns, and you find yourself staring at the page thinking, I can see what I've built, I just can't see what to do with it from here, that's the conversation I want to have with you. I work with midlife entrepreneurs who are ready to stop running someone else's version of success and start building something that actually fits their life. If you're ready to figure out what your dream business looks like, not the one you started with, but the one that makes sense for you, for who you are now, go to talkwithlori.com and schedule a call with me. We'll talk about where you are, where you want to go, and what actually looks like to build the business of your dreams from everything you've already built. Talkwithlori.com. So remember, you're not starting over. You're starting with decades of wisdom. You're starting with experience that cost you something to earn. You're starting with relationships, with credibility, with skills, with lessons you've already paid for. You're starting with the scars and the stories and the hard-won perspective that only comes from having actually done the work. Karen didn't leave 40 years of coaching behind when she decided to step into the role she always wanted to do. She carried every bit of it forward and put it somewhere that finally felt like home. And her message, she's still refining it. The direction is clear. The details get sharper every time she talks about it. And that's not a problem. That's the work. That's what building something real actually looks like. Next week, we're going to close out this series with what I think is the hardest conversation of them all, because it's one thing to realize the dream has changed. It's one thing to understand you're not starting over. But there's still that little voice, the one that I mean, that says that you don't have the right to want something different, that wanting less or wanting different or walking away from a 7-figure dream means you somehow failed. So next week, we're going to talk about why that voice is wrong and why you have full permission to want exactly what you want at this stage in the season on your terms. So until then, remember, it's never too late to build the business of your dreams, even if the path there looks different than you planned. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining me on the Midlife Business Academy. If today's episode made you think, or made you feel seen, share it with a fellow business owner who could use it too. When you're ready for more support, you'll find the link to book your Profitable Path Blueprint call in the show notes. I'll be back next week with more insight and strategy to help you build a business that truly fits your life and one of your dreams. We'll see you next time on the Midlife Business Academy.